He runs the Colby Wegter Venture, then digital marketing with agency Rocket, and has a background as a teaching and education. So we're going to let him in, introduce himself a little bit, and we'll dive into the show. Welcome to the show. How's it going today?
It's going great, Braden. Thanks for having me, man.
100%. I was going to say your last name. I just don't want to butcher it again.
Yeah, it's Wegter. The G sounds like a K. It doesn't make any sense.
Wegter. But yeah, tell me a little about yourself before we start the show.
Yeah, well, I just appreciate you having me coming on. I mean, in terms of the elevator speech, I guess, is I am currently a full-time digital marketer, but I have really put an emphasis on helping others who were basically where I was a couple of years ago. So those are people primarily like service-based providers, right? So a lot of agency owners, anyone who's working directly with clients, and they just don't know what the next step for their business is, right? They had no money and nothing but time at the beginning, and now they have no time and nothing, no use for that money in terms of mental like health. So I am basically trying to reverse that and make their business something that they actually want to grow and with less stress doing so.
100%. At least from my time in business, which hasn't been very long, you either have time or you have money, but you can't have both.
Yeah, it's a tough balance. And yeah, and people say like work-life balance and harmony and all that sort of stuff. A lot of it's kind of BS. And let me know if I can swear on this podcast. It's just kind of my norm. So I'll try and not abuse that. But yeah, there's an element. I take more of like seasons, right? Is you have an abundance of one more than the other, and then it can reverse, just like you said. So the balance thing, I think, is kind of a red herring.
100%. Diving into the show. So we're just going behind the brands, different people on LinkedIn, behind the brands of different people on the internet, just what they do, their background a little bit. Just a lot of college kids I've found are trying to get into business, don't know a lot about business, weren't born like me. I wasn't born in the background of business. So it's like, okay, I'm interested in this. Now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of fake information out there. There's a lot of good information. So it's like trying to filter ourselves out of that. Diving into the show, though, we have 3 sections: short question, long question, and the millionaire secret. This is your insight from the last 10 years. Diving into the short question, though, I got 23 AI-generated questions. I want you to choose 3 numbers, and we'll dive into it.
Choose 3 numbers. All right, let's go 7, 21, and 23.
Okay, 7. What role does innovation play in what you do when it comes to digital marketing, when it comes to internet, LinkedIn stuff?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty much everything. That actually is something that I end up telling my clients all the time. I say we're dealing with an ever-shifting landscape, right? So tactics I'm using today could be outdated by tomorrow, and the tactics I'm using today are certainly outdated or would be completely like unknowable 2 years prior, right? So in terms of innovation, what I will like to say about it, Braden, is that innovation is really important in terms of thinking on the longer term horizon, right? So, you know how when ChatGPT was starting to be more universal and everybody came out with like, hey, 80 prompts for $20 on X, Y, and Z, that's like riding a wave, and those people are just looking for the next like shiny object. So I find my role with innovation is to use it, but also to give kind of preset boundaries around it, especially for people who don't understand it as well as I do, which are always going to be my clients, right? So my mission is to make sure it's leverageable for a longer period rather than just like, let's see what sticks kind of thing. I'm really in the business of long-term value. So it plays a massive role. How I approach it is a lot more future focused than like, oh, we have to do this right now. Proactive versus reactive, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. Question 21. How do you think digital marketing can contribute to solving global challenges?
Oh, man, I love that. I haven't heard a global question, especially around digital marketing. I would say, you know, this is going to be a first thing that pops in my head sort of answer, since I haven't heard anything like that before, is probably the level of access. I think, you know, even going back to like biblical times and all that sort of stuff, it was all about who had access to what, right? And like, you know, based on language barrier, based on technology barrier, based on who has the money and that sort of stuff. And so I would like to see digital marketing as more of a leveler than as a divider. And so I think really what I love about marketing is it is it's advertising and transformation. It's advertising and identity, right? Because marketing itself is not a tangible thing. You can't put it in your mouth and eat it. It won't shelter you. So I think its ability to connect more people is really where I see it affecting a global scale. So my hope is that marketing gets cheaper, because then more people can access it and promote it to the parts of the world where it's not prominent right now.
100%, 100%. And then 23, looking ahead, what are your goals or aspirations for the future?
Oh, those are really straightforward right now. So
Okay.
as we record this, I've really enjoyed the marketing position. I'm a partner, and part of me transitioning into a more strategic role is to have the next generation, manage the clients directly and really improve the customer experience. So I'm in that right now. I'm training a handful of people who are basically going to replace me, and if I do it well, they'll do it better long term. And so what I'm really focused on is now helping more of those people outside of my individual organization. I think I have a lot to offer. And so that's what we were talking about, right at the beginning in my intro, is I basically want to help other service providers, because it took me 7 years, Braden, to do anything like I'm doing now. And there was a ton of failures and I burnt out ridiculously hard a handful of times. And I see so many people I talk to trending that way. So I would love it for them to not take 7 years, B, not burn out, and then C, actually see what their true value is beyond serving clients. So that's building the life they want through freedom, whatever. All of those are achievable. They just need adequate support to be able to understand it, right? Because if you go alone, like I did for 7 years, you realize like how lonely and how difficult that is. Whereas if I would have just had support from anybody who had done it before me, it would have been a lot less of a troublesome experience. I'm still thankful for it, but it would have been nice to speed it up and have a lot less turmoil along the way.
100%. Dive into the long question section. I've been thinking a lot about that recently as well. How it's like systems are supposed to save yourself time, energy, and money.
Yeah.
But if you like don't have a system, you're just recreating the wheel over and over and over again. I know systems is super important to what you do. And how is systems in your business blessed you, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed the first thing. Is some of my advice, especially these people who feel in the weeds, is just kind of asking them those questions. Okay, how much of the things you do are repeatable, and then how many of those steps are you actually repeating over and over again? Because if you do something over and over, like think of onboarding a client, right? If you don't have a client template onboarding, or onboarding template, I should say, you are just resending messages. You are redoing all this sort of stuff, and so it may not seem like a lot, but I equate it to, I live in the city. I've basically signed up to sit at more red lights than your average human being, right? There's nothing wrong with that.
For
Society
sure.
functions around red and green lights. But like I've chosen to sit idle for more hours than like my family does in the rural area. There's not even a stoplight in the town I grew up in. You know what I mean? So
For sure.
it's the same thing with systems, is like, okay, if you are signing up for it and you have no control over it, you accept it. But very few people realize, like, if I just looked at every single thing I did and said, could I just write a sentence about this, or could I record a 30-second Loom video on this, how much time that saves long term. Especially with a lot of people I encounter, they want to grow the business and they want to be able to step away and take vacations. You cannot do that if the business runs entirely through you,
Mhm.
right? So it is not complicated stuff. It's record a video or make a checklist of things. And the more and more you do that and then store it well, you don't even have to do that yourself. Find an organized person and they'll do it for you. Those are the things that start buying you back time, because it is absolutely counterintuitive to say, I want to scale my business and then keep repeating stuff that could just be automated or delegated.
100%, 100%. And going back to like the whole scientific method, if you like change your system every time,
Yeah.
there's no way to track what the variables are missing.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned time, energy, and money, right? Like the easiest thing for humans to part with is money. And then the next hardest thing is time. And then it's energy. And then it's your identity at the top of that pyramid, right?
Mhm.
So I'm going through that a ton, especially with how I am preparing for this community I'm trying to launch to help these other service-based providers. Is I do not feel bad about asking a premium in terms of money, because
Mhm.
everything I'm going to be providing them will help them with their time, energy, and identity, right? And so it is one of those things where it's like, time is the or money is the most common thing on earth. They
Yeah.
just print more of it. Time only goes down, right?
Yeah.
So at the very least, that's what we're offering people is get some of that time back by just running your business more efficiently. And also, by the way, it's going to be less stressful when you do that. And it's not rocket science stuff.
100%. You put identity at the top.
I
Why do you do
do. Why is that?
Yeah.
Something I've learned, and hopefully this doesn't eat into the $1 million question or whatever. That was it, the $10 million, whatever you said. Um, I I'm good at back end sales. I'm not good at front end sales. That's one of my blind spots, right? Is like speaking to a new person who I've never met before and that sort of stuff. So, but I was more convinced that I'm good at talking to people. I've done that for a living, right? I've had 1,100 plus clients in the last decade, and a lot of that is talking to them. So I know I have the reps in terms of talking. It was more of I'm thinking of this wrong. I'm not bringing the value to them correctly. And I kept thinking, oh, you saving time is the value. Time is a byproduct of being who you want to be, right? Controlling your time. So if I could speak to them more about instead of you're going to save time, your spouse and you get to go on a vacation more often, right? Their identity is someone who can deliver for them. They have free time and they can actually bring their spouse along with that sort of stuff as well. Or something as simple as like, your energy or identity can be connected to how much money you make. Well, it's not about what's in your bank account. It's that you never have to worry about where your next meal is coming from or if the lights are on, if your business is going to fold, right? I want people to feel the identity of not I'm in the weeds and I'm a fraud, but I'm a badass who's going through the challenges of building a business. And so long as I check off these boxes, it's going to get better. Right. And that's kind of a long-winded way to say is I want these people to never have to guess if they're on the right track. Not that it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
Right. So I put identity at the top because I think it's the largest motivator. It's like why people connect to religions, sport teams, where they're located, all that sort of stuff. It's part of their identity. It's who they are. So it's huge in terms of how I've learned to speak about that. And obviously you can see I'm still workshopping it as I speak about it. Right.
100%. Diving into identity even more, I know you said you're workshopping it, but how do you think about raising your identity or being more confident in your identity?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Raising your identity. I mean, I think again, first thing that pops in my mind is like having more of that support. I think it's really difficult to raise your identity just from your isolated, work from home office or whatever. If you're not having somebody else, whether it's a family member, total stranger, mentor, whatever, helping you say like, okay, you are on the right track, even if it doesn't feel that way, or that thing, yeah, that was a waste of your time, but you learned something, right? It's unless you have those little validations from people, ideally someone who's done it before, it's a lot bigger of a challenge to raise your identity because you just have no idea. It's you're poking in the dark, right? So that's what I would say is probably the best way is finding someone who's done it before, and they're not really that hard to find if you start looking. So it has to be outside of yourself, I think, which is interesting because can I ask you the same question? Like how would you answer that?
Um, what question? To raise your identity question?
Yeah, how because I feel like you're very much, from afar, Braden. I've seen you do a lot of things individually and grab success as an individual. But so I'd be curious if you actually agree with what I'm saying or if you think it's not what you would say.
I don't know. I think what Hormozy talks about is
Yeah.
like once confidence is like doing what you saying and doing what you're gonna do. And once you do and say what you're going to do, you become someone that's gonna make goals and hit them.
Hmm.
And do you know that you can raise your identity because people can expect you to hit what you wanted to hit?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's value in that. I think it's probably not a black and white answer, right?
Yeah,
Because it's I I set goals, and sometimes I'll be that person where I'm like, "Yep, I absolutely hit that," and I feel good about it. And then there'll be times where I hit that, and I'm like, "Nothing. My life hasn't changed. What do I care?" And then there will be other times where I've set the goal, whether I'm on track for it or behind. I'm just like, "Do I even want to do this?" Because
for sure,
things change, right?
for
So
sure.
I think there's elements of both of what we're saying. I really like what you're saying if you know exactly who you are,
Mm,
right? Even if you're not who you want to be, you know where you want to be. it's, it's funny you say that, because I've been polling a lot of people and getting a lot of surveys to make sure the community I'm building is going to solve the right problems.
Mhm.
The top two things that these people are struggling with, the first one's not surprising, is getting leads.
Yeah.
The other one is the mental struggle, loneliness, being patient, feeling like they're on track. That was like far and away. Those two blew every other problem they have out of the water. Right. And so, in a lot of the conversations I have, I feel like a lot of people I talk to, they don't know who they are
Mm.
or exactly what they're trying to do. They have a little bit of money because their business is working, but they have no clue if they actually like that or not, which is kind of wild.
Yeah. I feel
So
like what's it called? You said leads and loneliness, right? And not sure what they're doing.
yeah, just kind of the mental struggle of being an entrepreneur in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like if they had more leads, it would solve the second one.
It's interesting. Yeah. I think it depends, where it kind of goes back to me on the values side,
Yeah.
right? That's something I really had to like focus in on too, is I would love to say I'm motivated by money. I want to make as much money as possible. There's no doubt about it. Right. I don't really think of it in terms of a number. I think of it in terms of influence, because
Mm.
one of my largest goals in life is to make several six or ideally seven-figure donations anonymously. I
Well,
want the impact of the money, not my name on it, not I hit my goal or
yeah.
whatever, right? Um, and so to be able to fulfill that, I think of what are the steps working backwards from, say, make $1 million to make that donation. It is helping other people hit their goals. Now, if their main goal is to make $1 million and they just want to keep it, that's amazing. But if their main goal is to impact other people and that sort of stuff, I will probably vibe with that person a little bit more. I can probably help both, right? But the interesting thing about what we're talking about, because I feel like I'm getting a little too far ahead, is most of those people don't know if $1 million is actually the goal. They just put it in there because they're not sure.
Just
So
random number.
yeah.
Something I thought of recently, it's probably like 6 months ago or whatever. I was in the insurance space. I was doing that for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I've done sales in the past. I've done a lot of other things. I was like, there's millions of ways to make money, because even in the construction business, I love construction, and they're like, why are you going back to school? You can make six figures here. It's like,
Yeah.
if you do the research, you can make six figures everywhere. It doesn't really mean
Exactly.
much.
Yeah.
But it's like, create something that actually matters. And I feel like
Exactly.
a lot of businesses are out there just like, for money's sake, or just like, oh, we're just gonna get into a place where it's like no competition.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but are you actually creating something that like matters?
Well, and it's funny too, because I have like a small community. Is something I just created out of demand, having no clue what I was doing, right? And that one I'll have to sunset that one to actually create something of substance. But we still have our weekly meetings, and one of the members today said, we were talking about we're a pretty tight knit group, so we were talking about like religion and politics,
Yeah.
and we're all good. We don't have the same ideologies or any of that, but one of them said something so profound. It's like, the politics and religion, like that stuff just kind of comes back around, whether you're paying attention to it or not. I think the real people who change the world are entrepreneurs.
Mm.
They're the ones who are making the disruption, right? And then whether you like it or not, if you look at the Amazons and the Metas and the Teslas and all that, it's pretty clear. Like those are the game changers. Apple, obviously. I just read Shoe Dog, the Nike story, right? Like those are it's amazing, right? And so that's why because people said the same thing to me. They're like, well, you could make six figures doing your own thing in SEO if you wanted to, doing digital marketing. I was like, yeah, just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I want to do it.
For sure.
Right. I want to help people make change. So I'm perfectly comfortable making a modest income doing that. Obviously, the more the better, because that to me, that's influence, but not at the expense of the dollar, the most common thing in the world. More at the whether it's a buzzword or not, I want to impact more people than I care about dollars in my account.
Why do you think that is?
What's that?
Why do you think that is?
I don't get a high off of money. It's a weird thing. I came from nothing, so like I I grew up comfortable enough, like roof over my head, clothes on my back, and food in my stomach, but that was about it. Like we weren't rolling in it by any means. When I got to college, I had no support. Like I remember specifically, I had to get a job like immediately because I had an $1,100 bill that my student aid didn't cover, and I had to figure out how to pay it.
Yeah.
And then, after, like, that was a 4.5 year challenge of, like, I had several weeks, I'm talking like a year's worth of weeks where I lived on like $5 a week. So I was like skipping meals and I was working, right? Like all of my work went to rent, because rent is a whole other thing in this country. But like it all went to rent. I was like donating plasma to pay rent. Um, I created this meal called College Special, which was basically just potatoes and like turkey and bacon. The total cost being $5, but it was a nut. It was like a 5-pound bag, so I could like stretch it out for a week. So you would maybe think I'd be more motivated by money to not experience those again. I think for me, it's more of I just want to have enough to not experience that again. And all my effort would be to help people just have a more comfortable life. Right. And if they can impact others, that's the byproduct, right? The kind of the 2.0 impact where you can help someone and then they use that lesson and help somebody else. That would be massive.
100%, 100%. Diving a little bit back into your background, I know you've ran multiple companies, right?
Tried to, yeah. Not all of them successful, but a couple of them have been, yeah.
What lessons did you learn from each, maybe each one that you now implement into current one you're making?
And you said you want the failures as well, or just the ones that are working?
Probably failures. Hey, don't do this.
Yeah, the failures, and I'll keep it brief because I know I want to make sure we're maximizing the time. I will say the failures are pretty straightforward. Like, it's cliche, but if you don't have a passion for it, you're probably not going to stick with it. What I will say is I don't think passion is required. You just need to be able to acknowledge like what you're in it for. If you're in it to make money, then fine. Know what your number is and then hit it and then be done with it. Because people like to tie up, speaking of identity, they like to tie up their identity in what they're doing, right? If you don't bring passion into the work, you're going to be just a less happy person all day, right? So from the failures, I mean, some of the failures, just so you know, like started an AI copywriting agency, nobody cared. Try to do drop shipping with like leggings because I thought the margins were good. What do I know about leggings? I am a straight white American male. Like, I have no idea about leggings, right?
Yeah.
So that failed, and a handful of others. But like, I wouldn't even say I'm in love with marketing. What I will say is I'm in love with the problems that marketing can solve and seeing those firsthand. So when I'm helping a client solve a problem, that's where my high comes from. I don't get a high from selling them marketing solutions. Screw that. I get a high from actually solving a problem. And so what I've learned is just like find your thing, right? Why am I taking the extremely difficult route to help other people in a community? I've never run a proper community before. I know nothing about it, but I do know when I get someone one-on-one, I can help them. So the challenge is, how can I help more people outside of one-on-one, right? And those are challenges I want because it's going to make me better. And the better I get, the better I can serve people and the more people I can serve. So all of that is driven by passion, right? You make a handful of dollars here and there, and even that has made some money. But I'm not the person at right now. I'm not the person online saying like how to make 20K in a week. I'm not saying that, but I am definitely someone who, if you text me and you have a problem, you're going to get an answer. So, I don't know. It's what I've learned is like, I care way more about people problems than I would have ever thought. Right. And so I recommend, if you care about helping a specific sort of person, that is most likely the thing that you will stick with and get better at. So that's what I would say.
Talking about people problems, back to mindset, I guess. You said one of the things was most of the clients you meet with clients, right? You go over marketing and mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And mindset, there's a different loneliness, but also I've found, just me in general, but maybe other people as well, you're like afraid to be successful, but also afraid not to be successful.
The
Because you're like
paradox. Yeah.
putting in the hours, but you like never have that big break. I know that's something you talked about. It's like, oh, I'm putting in the hours and I never had like a big break. It's just like, I remember a mentor of mine said to be in business, just stay in business.
Pretty
It's like,
much. Yeah. And you mentioned
every day.
Hormozy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned Hormozy. He has an amazing one. He's like, the name of the game is not to win, because if you play the game of life, for instance, winning means final. So what you win at life if you die, that's not it, because that's how the game ends, right? So the way to do it is to stay in the game. So when people ask me about like money or what are my goals and all this sort of stuff, like I'm weird. I'm trying to build a life where I can read for 2 hours every day without guilt. I'm trying to build a life where I actually enjoy solving the problem, right? Because a lot of the people I serve, many of them make more money than I do, but they're miserable. And so money clearly cannot exclusively buy happiness. I am of the camp that it can buy some.
For sure.
I don't like people who just speak in broad strokes and money can't buy happiness. Yeah, of course it can. But all of it? No. So yeah, the people I mean, what would have been, what would you say has been the reason that you've had that paradox around success? Like what's the internal dialogue Braden has in your brain? Like every time you're like, where's my big break? Like how does that come about in your head?
I think you just always expect that something huge is gonna happen, and then, like, the lights will click, and it'll just be like, "Oh, I gotta figure it out." Or just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, just keep making phone calls, just keep going appointments, just keep putting in the hours."
Yeah.
And just, like, at least my social media, which is not a lot, or, like, different stuff, it's just in, like, incremental,
Yeah.
and just, like, there's never just, like, an explosion overnight.
Yeah. Where's the big spike? It's funny. Um, what do you want to use social media for? Do you want it to build an audience? Do you want it to get leads and sales? Like, what's your main goal with social?
I think it changes over time, so obviously sometimes you're looking for leads to connect with people,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes, like, right now, I'm just trying to build this podcast, trying to connect with people, trying to share the podcast with people,
Yeah. Well,
trying to help
mission
young
accomplished.
people get into business. Huh?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm here. So, it's we got connected through the magic of the internet. I used to scoff at social media and I was so agnostic for a long time, but now it just in this last year I've met so many dope human beings where it's just like,
Mhm.
oh, if you do it in a certain way, like you will meet amazing people. Some of which I've like met in person, which, to the circle outside of like I call it my past life. Like Stephen Bartlett kind of has this thing of social shedding, right? It's the
Yeah.
people from your former life. They just won't understand, like, why are you trying to get better? And why are you speaking on LinkedIn? And but it's like, you don't understand. It's fine.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, these people didn't try to murder you? And I'm like, no, believe it or not, they're actually who they say they are.
Meet
Uh,
strangers.
yeah, complete strangers. And man, that's something I absolutely like get the dopamine from. I just met somebody locally right before this, right? And it wasn't the first time I met him. We're good buddies now and probably sixth or seventh meeting, but that was just a LinkedIn thing. It was just like, hey, you're in Milwaukee, so am I, coffee. And now we're on like our sixth or seventh meeting. Like I said, it's just like that was surprisingly not that hard.
Yeah.
Right. And now amazing human being, and we're talking about ridiculous business stuff, and like his particular thing was he's in project mode and he's trying to figure out how to get recurring revenue,
Mhm.
which I have some experience in, so I hope it was helpful, right? These are the things that I just like absolutely love. And did he pay me for any of that? No. He's like, how can I help you? And I said, I'll start the community and let me pitch you because you're the perfect person for it. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. And that is literally how I'm approaching this whole thing. Is they will come in when they're ready. My job is to tell them about it. It's their job to say yes or no.
Mhm.
Right. So for you, where you're like, yeah, just keep making the phone calls. Where's the spike and all that sort of stuff? I like just those little micro things where it's just like, oh, okay. Are you familiar, Braden, with the 4 quarters thing? Like think of your day in quarters.
Like mini days?
Yeah, just I treat it like a basketball game, right? Like especially as a parent, like me and my wife lose like 3 quarters out of every four, all the
Mhm.
time. But if we can win 1 quarter in a day, we're like, it was a good day, right?
Mhm.
And when you're making 50 calls in a row and nobody books a time, or what, like, you do cold outreach and get less than 1% response and all that sort of stuff. It's just like, okay, that was 1 quarter where I spent 3 hours just doing this thing and it didn't work. What about the other quarters? Did
Mhm.
you get a text from a family member? Did somebody say, hey, you want to meet up in a couple weeks? Blah, blah, blah. Like that sort of stuff. That's what gets me going.
Yeah.
Um, because the individual actions, if we put this expectation on what we want on an individual thing, now you should have goals and metrics and all that sort of stuff. But the alternative, like, I don't like those in that if you don't hit it, you're like, well, that didn't work. No, it's like you learned, Thomas Edison, you learned 9,999 ways not to make the light bulb. Go do another one.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I'm ranting because I
Mm-hmm.
just am passionate about that stuff. But you probably have more questions, and I just like your perspective as well.
It's okay. It's okay. One thing you talked about, obviously, you're trying to build a community. I love the idea of community just because you can change your social circle. So we
Yeah.
talked about how you you become the people you spend the most time out with. So if everyone you spend time with is cynical, it's like how do you change your circle?
Yeah.
It's like join a community. What something you talked about the mindset of building the community is you said you used to want to serve behind you, but now you
Mm.
want to serve ahead of you, something like that.
Yeah. Well, the first community I ever put together, that was out of demand as well because again, I've been on LinkedIn for like a year and a half, having
Mm-hmm.
no clue what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just booking coffee chats with people, and I'd get like 10 a week, just like, hey, you're cool, I'm cool, let's just hang kind of thing, zero agenda.
Yeah.
And then there was like this 10-day period, Braden, where 6 out of those 10 conversations was someone like kind of coming there with a problem. And I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, totally. Something I'd handled in the agency or my past life. And, it was pretty quick solve. And then by the end of the call, all 6 of these people, and this is like not a joke, all 6 of these people were like, do you do coaching? Do you want to coach me?
You're like, yes.
To which I responded, no, I don't do coaching. I don't know what that is. And they were asking me like what the price is. And I said, I don't know. And so I said, why don't we just book a call for next week?
Yeah.
And if you get value on that one, we'll book another one. And if you get value on that one, we'll book another one. And they all ended up being like solopreneurs. And for a long time, because it's kind of like what you said, not sure how to be successful. I wasn't in like monetizing mindset. So I was just like, I'm helping people. I love this. This is great. And so, yeah, did that for free for several months. And then after a while, all those people were like, hey, it'd be nice if we could talk to other people like us versus just you. And so I'm a doer. So I just put the community together, zero clue how to do it. I did it poorly. There's still amazing people in there and that sort of stuff. But like a community is something you should really put your efforts in. And that's why I'm going to do this one correctly. But yeah, I mean, I almost forget your original question, but I put it together out of demand. And the mindset has really been a lot of the one-on-one conversations, but what I'm thrilled about is just they talk to each other, right? I played matchmaker for other cool people, and I don't even have to be in the room, and they're getting value. So that's been the most amazing thing. I would just want to recreate that, but make a higher value version of it.
Yeah. And this is like you said, your part-time gigs, solopreneur side gig, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a family, right? So I have a salary with the agency, and obviously I worked 7 years from my first paycheck was $300 for the entire month because we had one client, and we started from nothing, and I've built it up to what I have wanted it to be, but I've been perennially underpaid for years. That's kind of the plight of start your own business, right? Is you don't make a lot of money in the beginning unless you have a heater of some kind or somebody. We did it the hard way. We didn't have referrals. We were doing like cold outreach and all that sort of stuff. And we're just really good at retaining clients. So that's where the momentum picked up. But yeah, it is a side gig only because I need to make sure that I continue to provide for my family. But I am so much under the impression everyone says, only do one thing and all that sort of stuff. I agree, but you also need to be realistic, right? I'm not going to start completely over again because of self-belief. I 100% have belief. And I know the community will be great because I will not stop until it is. But I'm not just going to cut off what supports my family until until there's some sort of rub where they can't coexist. So just so you know, like, I'm still building it, but it'll be a pilot, and I'm capping it at 8 people. I'm not going to do 20 and 30 and try and grow it to 50 people right away. Because as much as that would be able to say, okay, this is the thing, go all in on it, I feel like I would have a lot of churn because I wouldn't be able to give individual focus as much as I'd want to the people, and they need to get results. I want these people to stay in there for years, not a couple of months. So to deliver that standard, I am capping it at 8 people to start, to make sure that every single one of those people has guaranteed they're going to get results. So yeah, that's one of the main things, is because my first community, I put a lot of people in there, and it became too unruly too quickly. So a lesson learned.
100%, 100%. I know you talked about goal setting.
Yeah.
I don't know if this has been your process, but my process has been like, I set a goal, and then just like, I talked about like how I hit goals, but I found what's even more important than the goals sometimes is just like the daily practices you do every day,
right,
to hit the goals.
Yeah. Is the question, do I agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do. I mean, I however it looks for each individual, I think it's kind of crazy for people to say there's only one way, or like do this. A lot of it's just kind of hack whatever. But what I will say that is pretty universal is you set a goal and you have to work backwards from it. Right. So like wanting $1 million is amazing, but that's not something you can hold in your hand tangibly in terms of how you achieve that. So it does need to come back to the micro, like what would I do for this quarter? What would I do for this month? What would I do per day? Right. I learned this through Matt Gray's community. He has kind of the vision board where he's just setting 10-year, 3-year, 1 year, 90-day, 30-day goals.
Yeah.
But all of those 30-day goals are serving the 90. All those 90 are serving the 1 year. So I do like that in terms of make it bite-sized so you can do it. So we're essentially saying the same thing. So much as just it's like the ladder up to what is the big goal, and then just working backwards on a day-to-day basis. How do you do that? One of my goals, just as for instance, is I want to be on 10 podcasts this year, and I want them to be amazing, right? So this is you're actually my first one, and it's May, right? So I appreciate that, but it's to be able to do that, I need to work backwards on at least a weekly basis, and inquire to other people with podcasts. Are you looking for guests? Here's what I bring to the table, all that sort of stuff. Because the 10 guest spots is not really, that's the result. It's me sending the messages and making the connections. Those are like the weekly goals that I need to hit. So it makes it really straightforward in terms of, if you want something, you need to look at the execution, and it needs to be achievable.
100%. So only 2 more questions.
Hit me.
And then we'll go to the millionaire question. So first, I feel like maybe it's just me, but a lot of people, just imposter syndrome, or afraid to be exposed. So I know when you're building, when you're like building community, it's like, oh, you have all this knowledge, all this information, but it's like, what if you don't? What if you like don't have the
I
answer?
love the question. Yeah.
What if you can't do it? You think you can do? Like, do you ever run into that? And like, how do you deal with being exposed?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say like 10 years ago, me would have absolutely freaked out with that. Like now it is all about, I am so interested in just helping that person solve the problem, whether it's me or someone else. Right.
Yeah.
So one of the big revolutions for me, especially in the last year, is when someone asked me something. Like I had a call yesterday with somebody who wanted a specific type of service, and I took the call knowing that we probably couldn't fit. And I started that call right away. It was a marketing call where I was just like, okay, just to make sure I don't waste your time, what is your budget?
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. The budget didn't match. And so we had a 45-minute call booked. It was a 7-minute conversation.
For sure.
Because it's just one of those things where, okay, I can't serve you, but I do have this network. You could try this person. You can try this route. You can try this service, right? That person left the call being like, thank you so much. So if I look at the dollar and say, oh, I missed out on the dollar, but again, I think long term, if I'm going to collect somebody's money to only underserve them, they're going to be pissed. They're going to hate the experience. And I'm not in the business of giving poor experiences. So to answer your question on the imposter syndrome, is I would say that's what I truly believe when people say your network is your net worth. I actually believe it is based on when someone has a problem you can't solve, you have someone in your network you can point them to. Right. Versus I get paid. I get to solve more problems because I have more available to me. Mm-hmm. Right. So I never fear of being caught out as a fraud or an imposter, because I've built really good connections where someone asks me a question, I'm going to think of somebody immediately and be like, talk to them.
Yeah.
Right. And of course that comes back around because they will reciprocate if they can't solve a problem that they know I can solve, and then they'll point them my way. And that's already happening. And I've only been doing this for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love that. I love that. Before we end, any more insight on your mind, thoughts on your mind?
I would just say, I love the questions that like what I want to ask you.
Okay.
Do you have that imposter syndrome, and when does it rear its ugly head?
I just feel like when I'm not working, like when I'm working, it's like good. But when I'm like not working, it's like I'm losing skills, I'm losing ability. Like, what am I doing?
If you're not moving, you're dying kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a tough one. I don't think this will solve your problem because people like you and me are wired differently. Trust me. Sometimes I say this to myself and I think I'm full of it, but there is an element, especially when you burn out. Like, have you ever had a proper burnout, Braden, where it's like been really bad?
It's been like, what the heck am I doing? Like, what's my purpose? Like, why the heck am I
Okay.
doing everything? So like stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, first of all, entirely normal.
Yeah.
And this is not a competition. Like, I had a couple burnouts in the same year where I thought I was going to die. Like, it was like super physical, like I'm dying. And that was completely self-induced. Like, I just worked too hard and didn't have my priorities straight. What I will say from those experiences, not dying, thankfully, is putting rest on your to-do list, right? If you look at rest as just another way to stay in the game, that not working guilt fades a little bit. Like, I play video games on purpose because I see that as a recharge to make sure I don't die in the future, because I will work 14, 15 hours straight. If I don't balance that with a little bit of, Niall Breslin calls it vitamin P, vitamin play, I'm gonna fail the game. I'm not gonna be able to stay in. So it's weird, but if you put rest on your to-do list or block it out in your calendar, it feels like an actual like intentional thing.
Yeah.
So, and you quite literally, I don't want you to burn out and die either. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying, having lived that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Where can people find you before we get into the millionaires?
Yeah, primarily on LinkedIn, and then colbywegter.com. So that's Colby like the cheese, and then WEGTER.com. It has my, just so everybody knows, when you're creating offers for the first time, it takes a little while. So it has my current offer on it, but by the time you might hear this, it'll likely have the community on there. I'm hoping to launch that end of May or early June, and it is May 8 right now. So a lot of moving parts yet to put together, but LinkedIn, I'm the only Colby Wegter that I know of, so I shouldn't be hard to find.
100%. Diving into the final millionaire secret, what insight do you have for the audience?
Yeah. Would you say the audience listening to this, Braden, is going to be more on the beginner side?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
probably like 8 younger.
Yeah. What I will say,
anything.
Yeah. The thing, this is a common theme with no matter who I talk to, whether they're further along or brand new, and I've definitely experienced it, is shorten the feedback loop would be the millionaire thing, because the community I'm building now, I know it's going to be good because I surveyed people. So if you have like imposter syndrome and you're afraid to ask, people don't care, right? There's this thing called the spotlight effect. You think everyone's watching you and waiting for you to screw up. They don't care. They're in their own lives, right? So what I do, and if it would help your audience, I'm happy to share it as well. When I needed to know, is what I'm about to build going to be worth my time? Is it going to solve real problems? Instead of guessing what to build, I surveyed people, right? And it's a simple type form with a DM that says, hey, I'm going to take 45 seconds of your time. No, this is not a pitch. I'm just collecting data. You fit a target audience, what I perceive as my target audience, please answer this, or don't. And just that alone, in the last couple of weeks, I've gotten like 50 plus responses. And that's where we were talking about getting leads and the mental struggle. I'm not guessing. That's the result.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would say, don't guess. Like, just be willing to ask. Tell people you're taking a little bit of their time, so you're not trying to blow smoke. Just be like, I need 30 seconds, or I need 90 seconds, or hey, I need a full 15 minutes on a call. Not everyone's going to say yes. Welcome to the real world. The
Mhm.
people who do are going to help you save so much time. Just ask questions like you wouldn't believe,
Mhm.
and you will know exactly what you need to do. So the short answer is shorten the feedback loop. Get data as quickly as you can, whether it's a survey, phone call, whatever. Because part of me spinning my wheels for like 8 or 9 months, where do I coach people? Do I not? Am I helping solopreneurs? Am I helping other people? I wasn't collecting any data, right? So just asking the question and getting that feedback loop to microscopic level is going to be a massive game changer for anyone, no matter what you're doing. And that should never end, by the way. You should survey people till the end of time.
100%, 100%. Thank you for hopping on the call. Thank you for your insight today.
Dude, my man, you're a fantastic host. I appreciate you having me on. This was awesome.